If there was going to be a trap game on Clemson's schedule this season, you could probably point toward Georgia Tech's visits at the end of the month. That might be a bit premature to say at the moment given how the number 2 team in the country is struggling on the road at Syracuse on Friday night and may have lost their quarterback to an injury. The Orange's offense not surprisingly led the way at the fast track of the Carrier Dome as a result, helping the home team to a 17-14 lead at halftime in what is rapidly becoming a very interesting conference game. Quarterback Eric Dungey was the trigger man for the Q's attack, which helped pick up chunk after chunk on one of the best defenses in the country. He finished the half with 193 yards and 2 scores through the air while also providing a solid threat with his legs and rushing for 47 yards as well. Despite the impressive stat line, he did suffer a minor leg injury on a quarterback sneak that could hamper his ability to keep things going in the second half. While Dungey isn't 100%, neither was his counterpart in Kelly Bryant. The Tigers QB was solid, throwing the ball 12-17, 116 yards, but was not able to move around all that well with that balky ankle. Most pressing for the fans back at home was the fact that he was slammed to the turf just before the break, having to be helped off by trainers with what his coach later said was a concussion. Running back Tavian Feaster rushed for a 37-yard touchdown in what was otherwise the lone offensive highlight for a team that is playing a backup behind center the rest of the way. As bad as things were on both sides of the ball for Dabo Swinney's squad, it could have been a much bigger hole they were in had there not been a swing early in the second quarter. An offensive pass interference penalty wiped a touchdown off the board that would have put Syracuse up 2 touchdowns. Instead, just 2 plays later the Tigers ended up tying things up at 14-all on a rough mistake by the Orange when tailback Dante Strickland fumbled while being tackled, allowing Tanner Muse to scoop and score from 63 yards out. The Dome has been a strange place to play for many ACC teams over the years, no matter how good or bad Syracuse has been, and it seems like that could be the case following the first half. Perhaps a trip to the locker room will reignite the second-best team in the country, but through 2 quarters at least, the Tigers are looking mighty vulnerable on the road against an up-tempo offense that is putting up quite the fight on Friday night. Friday the 13th lived up to its reputation for number 2 Clemson. The Tigers lost their starting quarterback due to a concussion, saw their defense inexplicably get turned around in a track meet, had one of the worst fake punts of the season, and never led all night long. More ghastly though, Clemson saw Syracuse secure the biggest victory of the Dino Babers era as the Orange looked like the better side from kickoff to the final whistle in a massive 2,724 upset that will shake up both ACC and college football playoff races. Quarterback Eric Dungey led the way for the home team at the Carrier Dome, throwing for 278 yards and 3 touchdowns despite facing one of the best defensive lines in the country on every snap. He also provided an incredible dimension with his legs and rushing for 61 yards, including the game-sealing first down with just over 90 seconds to go. The fast-paced offense racked up numerous multiplay drives as they marched up and down the field from the opening kickoff and seemed to have an answer just about every time. The Tigers simply did not come to play on Friday night, looking sluggish from the get-go. Not helping matters was the loss of starting quarterback Kelly Bryant, who didn't look fully healthy while dealing with an ankle injury and then suffered a concussion on a scramble just before halftime. While the run game of Travis Etienne and Tavian Feaster both scored long touchdowns, there never was much of a rhythm to the offense as they stalled out on several drives. Were it not for a Tanner Muse 63-yard scoop and score fumble return in the first half, things could have been even worse for the defending national champions. If there is one silver lining for Dabo Swinney's group, it was that they were in a similar spot last season, losing to Pitt at home before eventually rallying to win the league and the national title. Things might be a little tougher this time around, but the path remains the same inside the division and on the national stage, with games against a ranked NC State team and big name in Florida State still to come. Perhaps most crucially, a bye week awaits the team once they return back home and will provide some much-needed rest after some significant injuries in the first half of the year. Syracuse doesn't really care about all that talk though, for there was nothing freaky on Friday for the Orange as they pulled off one of the memorable upsets of the season so far. After several days of wondering and looking at reports, it appears the Friday night game between Washington State and Cal in Berkeley is going to kick off. The Pac-12 issued a statement around 4:25 p.m. PT about the status of the game, which was threatened to be delayed or postponed due to hazardous air quality as the result of fires in the Bay Area this week. Student-athlete safety and the safety of fans attending the game and workers operating on-site continues to drive the decision-making for the conference and our institutions. UC Berkeley is working closely with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to monitor local conditions and forecasts, as well as with the university medical personnel to monitor and assess the situation. In consultation between the conference office and the athletics department staffs at California and Washington State, as of 3:30 p.m. PT, it was agreed that tonight's game will be played as scheduled. The conditions will continue to be monitored through game time. Air quality in the East Bay was listed at 167 about 3 hours prior to kickoff, within the NCAA limit of 200 that would have put the game in jeopardy. While the number may be in the acceptable range, the air is by no means clear and is considered unhealthy by federal officials, which means everyone else should reduce prolonged or heavy exertion. That could be an issue for the two teams as the night goes on and they try to play a football game. The frontrunner for the Group of 5 bid this season heading into the weekend just might be Central Florida, which is undefeated and rolling up some mighty impressive victories under head coach Scott Frost. While the Knights have been great between the lines, things have not been so rosy away from the field at the school, and it could have a multi-million-dollar impact to the budget down the road. The Orlando Sentinel reports that Spectrum Stadium, home of UCF football, is rusted, corroded and facing some serious repairs following a nearly 500-page engineering report commissioned by the school. According to the report, which was contracted by the university and completed in August, Spectrum Stadium's rust problems have affected the structural integrity of the 45,000-seat venue at the university's main campus in East Orange County. Corrosion affects more than 80,000 square feet of the stadium, it said. 4 stairways had heavily rusted supports and a potential for significant section loss at the time, the TLC engineering report found. Areas of the stadium's fireproofing were cracked, corroded and grated, failing. That is not great. It's especially concerning in a humiditic environment like Orlando, and comes not long after a recent hurricane came through the area to force the cancellation of several football games. We completed repairs on all of the most significant findings before we played our first home game this season, UCF Assistant Vice President Chad Binna told the paper. This report will help us determine the best way forward for additional repairs and long-term maintenance of the stadium. Kudos for the school stepping up repairs in time for the 2017 season to begin, but the looming prospect of a potential $14 million bill to fix everything correctly is still out there, to be dealt with. Such concerns are probably not on the minds of Frost and his coaching staff as East Carolina comes to town on Saturday, but it may lead Knights fans to eye their seats a little differently when it comes time for kickoff. College football fans love to get underneath their opponent's skin, but that just might backfire this week when Baylor visits Oklahoma State. That's because it's homecoming in Stillwater this week. As part of the festivities, the school dyed a fountain orange outside a campus library following an annual tradition. It's one of those simple things that are always cool to see when a university gets into the spirit prior to a big game. Well, it seems some Bears fans decided to get in on the tradition too, only this time they snuck onto campus and then readied the previously orange fountain to Baylor's primary color of green. Per OSU blog Pistols Firing, here's a look at the fountain in both shades. Baylor is 0-5 on the season and ranked 115th in total defense at the moment. Given that Mason Rudolph, James Washington and the rest of the high-flying OSU offense is one of the best units in the country, perhaps it was wiser for the Bears to not poke the bear in this case. Something certainly says this little bit of fun between Big 12 rivals won't turn out so great if the team takes it personally come Saturday afternoon.